sorry.
Greg's not there, but you're ready to go.
Okay, yep, I have 4:01. I would like to call this meeting to order. Our first item will be the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
And if we could have a moment of silence. Thank you. Anybody for public comment? No? So we'll discuss and approve the minutes from last week.
I move that we approve the minutes from Thursday, January 23rd, 2025.
Second.
Any discussion?
I wasn't here, so
The only thing I did remove from the copy I sent to all of you was the town manager is only presenting CIP tonight, not the budget.
Greg called in on the conference line. Greg, are you there? Okay.
Hi, Greg.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everybody.
afternoon.
I couldn't get the Zoom to work.
That's okay, we can hear you.
Okay.
So we've had a motion and second to discuss and approve the minutes from last week. My only comment was that the town manager is only presenting CIP tonight. So I did remove that from the,
Okay.
okay, so it's my understanding that those on Zoom cannot vote. So we'll vote to approve the minutes. Mike?
Yes.
Yes.
Darlene?
Yes.
Lee? Richard?
I was not here, so
Richard
Abstain.
abstains, and I'm a yes. Okay, nobody from Select Board? Nobody from School Committee? So, Mr. Town Manager, it's all yours.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So on the shorter sheet before you, you will see the item that the department requested listed along with the amount attached to that request. And then in the column to the right, you'll see the CIP proposed recommendation. And then to the far right, you will see the funding source. So starting with conservation, and I won't go over each and every line item because they should be before you, specified by department, but I will review for the viewing audience the totals of each department. In conservation, there was a $55,000 request, and the CIP recommendation was $50,000. For DPW, the request was $743,569, and the recommendation is $358,569. DPW transfer station, $26,000, and that is what was recommended. For fire, it was $1,262,000, and that is what was recommended. For IT, or information technology, the request was $106,000, and that was the amount that was recommended. In natural resources, the requested amount was $354,488, and that is the CIP recommendation is $144,732. In planning and construction, the total was $42,514,000, and the CIP recommendation is $42,039,000 $42,039,000. And police, $386,000 was requested and also recommended. In the school, the requested amount was $155,485, and that is what was recommended. In wastewater, it was $39,430,000, and the proposed CIP recommendation was $26,950,000. In total, the requested amount was $85,033,442, and the CIP recommendation is $71,478,686. I would like to just point out that this includes one big-ticket item that we knew was coming, and that was the construction of the police department. And you will also see, and that, for those in the viewing audience, is a total of $37,150,000. And that would be a debt exclusion. Anything that's listed as a debt exclusion is going to require a 2/3 vote at town meeting, and it will also require an affirmative ballot vote as well. If it says free cash or capital stabilization, obviously it will not require a debt exclusion. You will see that under...
Excuse me, what was the number again?
For which, Mike?
The police station.
Police station is
$37,000,000.
$37,150,000. $37,150,000.
And Mr. Town Manager, can you repeat for me again the amount that was approved for the total of all departments? It was
$478,686.
The last page.
Oh, I was looking over here.
You going to explain how we're doing the wastewater versus the police station?
I was just going to get into that, but I had a question, so I wanted to be respectful.
What we came to a compromise with.
Can you,
I didn't hear him.
I didn't hear him either. What is he asking about?
Greg, can you repeat the last half?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Is that better? Mr. Collins, can you just talk to the fact that even though we have really two big ticket items on here, that one big ticket item is coming in May, and another ticket item is coming likely in October if it meets the criteria that was set forth in our meeting after we compromised on that. Can you explain that so they understand exactly what's happening there?
I was going to. I just had to answer a question, that's all. So before I get into that, are there any other questions?
Okay.
Seeing none, I'm going to just continue. So what Mr. McElvery is referring to is, in terms of the Mashpee Wakeby wastewater system, you'll see an amount in the total of $24 million. That was conditionally approved upon the recommendation for the October town meeting, and also specifically SRF funding, and it has to be a debt exclusion. I mean, obviously, we don't have free cash and/or capital stabilization and the amount of $24 million to come up with. So it's got to be a debt exclusion. So it was approved or recommended by CIP to go with those conditions going forward. And I also have, fresh off the press, I haven't even had an opportunity to read this myself, but I did receive a message from Mr. Gottlieb, who is a member of the CIP committee, and he wanted me to make sure that you folks were aware of this. The DEP list of projects to be funded by the SRF was released this morning. The Mashpee Wakeby treatment system was voted on yesterday, was included in this list. This is good news. Before concerns began, a few explanation notes are warranted. This is a draft list that is subject to public comment before it is finalized. And in the history of the SRF, no project listed on the draft funding list has been dropped from the final list. Projects are generally added, but they're not dropped in the comment period. So the project should be considered as selected for financing in 2025. And the project is listed in the amount that would be articulated previously, or less.
That's great.
It's not gonna be higher, it's gonna most likely be lower.
Right, and if I could add, the SRS funding, just a reminder, there's a 0% loan that we'll get, but there's also some forgiveness with that, Rodney. I can't remember if it's 18 or 28%, but there's forgiveness that goes along with that at the end of the period, from my understanding.
Yes, and everybody understands the state revolving fund. There's a timeline that we just want to make sure that we meet to keep the process moving forward. So this is all consistent with the timelines that have been previously established. The only thing that was a question mark for the CIP committee was whether or not construction should be funded at the same time as design and engineering. We generally do design and engineering first, and then we do construction subsequent thereto. And that is exactly what we did yesterday.
Right. And Rodney, do you know if we have an opinion from legal whether or not we can run this much through the October meeting versus a May meeting?
I did speak to counsel about that this morning. She was going to double check, but based upon the conversation that I had with her this morning, she felt very confident that we would have no issues going forward in October. Because the CIP plan is being submitted to you as you see it. Whether or not we go forward in May or whether we go forward in October isn't as critical as having the plan by which to go by, which you now have. The only thing that I would point out is there's a provision in the charter that specifically says most financial items would go in May. And the reason for that is because we don't want to be in the middle of the fiscal year and somebody coming in and saying, well, we need $800,000 for whatever the item may be. That is not a good financial practice to engage in. But in this particular case, whether you seek a debt exclusion in October or whether you seek one in May, a debt exclusion is a debt exclusion. You're either going to finance it in October or you're going to finance it in May. We're not seeking the amount, let's say, from free cash, which we wouldn't be able to do for $24 million anyway. You all know that. But let's say there was an amount that we would be able to possibly entertain. We generally don't want to do it in October, and the reason is simple. We may not have the certified free cash amount known by the time we hit town meeting in October. And we may not have the funds readily available. But in this particular case, if the funds are going to be available or authorized, it's going to be a debt exclusion.
How much of the 37 million is coming out of state funds? Is it all state? Is this going to be, the state going to produce any of the money for the?
The $37 million for the
Yeah,
police
yeah.
department?
Yes,
It's coming from your pocket. Taxpayers of Mashpee,
in Mashpee.
yes.
And there was complete agreement on the CIP, because most of those people have gone through that facility, some of you have too, to see how atrocious it is and the conditions that they're working in. So it was unanimous that that project go forward.
What's the timeline on that, Rodney?
If it's authorized, we're hoping to have it completed in a couple of years. And what's going to happen if it's authorized is the construction of the new facility will be directly behind the existing facility. They will continue to operate out of the existing facility until the new facility is built. Once the new facility is built, the old facility is going to be removed or demolished, and then that will turn into parking. So basically, you've had parking in the back historically, and the building in the front, and now it's going to be reconfigured. If it is approved, parking is going to be extremely tight for a while because of the construction equipment, but they would much rather deal with that than deal with rats in the basement.
I hope I don't need.
And in the cells.
Yes.
I hope we don't need any.
Could you tell me about the on wastewater, the Mashpee wastewater Phase 3 that got denied, including sludge removal? It's the last item.
That was something that the wastewater management department said could be put on hold, so I don't remember the specifics to it.
No, they just said it would go off 1 year.
Yeah, I think it's just off by 1 year.
Right.
Is that your memory, Greg?
Yeah, it is. And I think, again, some of these things are going to be, for example, the Phase 3 recharge evaluation, the Mashpee Wakeby design and engineering, and the Alma treatment. That will go forward, my understanding, Rodney, as, the May warrant that will go through, and then the bigger ask, the 24 million plus, will go in October, because there was a real feeling that they didn't want to hit the townspeople with a huge number in May, because then you're pitting wastewater against the police station or vice versa, and that would be a mess. So that's why we divided it up, and it was important to make sure that we had the design and engineering first before we went ahead with the construction as well. So.
Yes.
Is there going to be a phosphorus removal process? Are we going to remove phosphorus from the water as well? Is that a separate item or what?
Yes. I can get you all of the details in terms of the numbers through the wastewater superintendent.
Okay, I'll have to make a trip over there. Right now, the way it stands, phosphorus is not taken out of the water system. And that's a big deal.
I would just want to know where you're specifically referring to.
Yeah, talk offline.
And the amount that will be at the town meeting then would be the design and engineering of the Mashpee Wakeby wastewater project. And does that require a ballot vote or just the vote at the?
Which one are you referring to?
Looking at the under wastewater, the Mashpee Wakeby wastewater system design and engineering.
Yes.
Which
that-
apparently you're going to.
That requires a debt exclusion, so that would go 2/3 to town meeting, and assuming it was a favorable result, then it would go to the ballot.
Ballot, okay.
Basically, in your far right column, if it says free cash, if it says capital stabilization, if it says ambulance receipts, if it says MCAT funds, those are on hand. If it says a debt exclusion, then we need to fund it through the mechanism that you just described. If it says FC and CS, It's a combination of free cash or capital stabilization. That's what that stands for.
So those first three line items under wastewater, are those eligible for any of the 0% financing?
Yes. The SRF,
It's for the entire
Yes.
thing, not
Yes.
just, okay, thank you.
There was a lot of good deliberation, a lot of good conversation, and really people came around the table to make this work out. We didn't know if this was going to work out as we went to the meeting yesterday. At least that was my opinion, Rodney. But it did work out, and I think everyone was content with the outcome.
on the longer sheet that you have, not to be confused with the shorter sheet that you have, see essentially the 5-year plan, subject to change, but as it stands right now, it includes fiscal year '26, which is what we're talking about, fiscal year '27, the subsequent year, and then the subsequent years of fiscal year '28, '29, and '30. And you even have some items there from '31. So these are very tentative numbers, and they're very difficult to project. Never mind 5 years out, they're difficult to project even 1 or 2 years out. But for the purposes of meeting the criteria established by the charter, we're trying to provide you with a 5-year plan that outlines what's coming down the pike. If it says TBD, that means to be determined. We try to get a good faith estimate as quickly as we can for the purposes of plugging those numbers in. But we have found that sometimes when we do it too soon, it's a premature number, and then based on inflation or based on supply chains, we suddenly are off, and it looks like it might be an unreasonably inflated number, when in fact we were just trying to plug in a number a little too soon. So these are the good faith estimates that the departments have provided us, and there's a lot of to be determined.
I have a question about a few of the things that were taken out of the budget, and that has to do with the senior center emergency generator and the library emergency generator. Do they already have generators and they just need new ones, or do they not have them and they need a generator?
If I remember correctly, the Senior Citizen Center does not. Yeah.
Okay.
And neither does the
Okay.
library.
Yeah, I don't think they do.
Thank you.
I think
And
those are new
as
ones.
far as the generators are concerned, we obviously have one here. There is one at the police station. There's others. But what we try to do is we focus on the areas that may be used as a warming center. We don't have a shelter. We use Sandwich, or a location in Sandwich for the shelter. So if we had a situation involving a major power outage through town and we needed to activate Town Hall as a warming center, we can do that. We are not set up as a shelter. We were looking at some other sites, whether it be the Senior Citizen Center, or in the library's case, it may not be as functional for that purpose, but in the end, what really drove the decisions was coming up with a figure that would limit the amount that we were going to pursue for a debt exclusion. Because the police department we knew, or the police station, was going to come in at a figure that was estimated to be around 40 million. And that's where it came in. So we just did not want to go too much too soon without consideration of the impact that it carries. And these were some difficult choices. I mean, there are some things that were not funded this year that were hopefully planned on being funded next year. But we looked at what we needed to balance the budget operationally. I looked at what CIP needed and then compared it to what was available for free cash and capital stabilization. We didn't use all of capital stabilization, but I believe there was just about $1 million left in it. We didn't want to certainly wipe it out, but at the same time, we wanted to address priorities. And at the same time, we just wanted to make sure that the police station and wastewater, because it has been identified as a priority for the town, we were moving that forward, but not forgetting the critical assets that were needed in capital improvement.
Thank you.
I'm curious, under the police, 9 police vehicles for 168,000, and then below that, 3 police vehicles for 218,000. What are the differences in those?
The difference is the majority were on lease, so it's just a lease payment, whereas the higher number is outright purchase. And if you're wondering why are we no longer leasing, the short answer, Mike, is we discovered that in the lease program, in the past, it seemed to make more sense in leasing because we were able to get a greater number of police vehicles every 3 years, and the line vehicles were being replaced every 3 years. Because the interest rates have gone up and it was affecting us on the lease program, we've decided it's probably better to avoid purchasing 9, because buying 9 at the same time would be extremely expensive. But we're going to get the same amount. It's probably going to be like 3 or 4 per year outright purchase versus lease, if that makes sense.
It does?
And we did take a look at the interest that we were paying versus what we were paying. And we also take a look at what we are going to get for a trade-in versus what we are going to get typically at an auction. The line cars, and when I say line cars, the cars that are out there, the black and whites 24/7, after 3 years, they're generally junk. We don't get anything for them, maybe $1,000. On the other hand, if it's a non-line vehicle, like a administrative vehicle or a detective's vehicle, that can last anywhere from 6 or 7 years, and even at the conclusion of that duration, they're not junk. And we can usually bring them up here at Town Hall or reassign them to Recreation or some other department for another 2 or 3 years.
But the line cars last about 3 years period?
They're going 24/7, and the problem is, it's not just the mileage, it's the idle time. They get a lot of idle time, and it's not just patrol, it's the details, etc. So, yes, generally speaking, the majority of them are junk after 3 years. They're not getting your typical tender love and care either. I mean, there's acceleration time, there's emergency driving, obviously using due caution. So the short form that you have is the plan that was approved and is submitted by the CIP committee. It was voted on and approved yesterday, and there was a public hearing. And the longer form that you have is the tentative 5-year plan.
Mr. Collins, is it possible to get hard copies left in the Finance Committee mailbox for those of us who can't be at this meeting?
Absolutely. They'll be there
Thank
today.
you.
They'll be there today.
And can we get an electronic copy of those?
If you don't, you will. I'll make sure that it gets sent out electronically
That
tomorrow.
would be great, thank you.
So you'll have it 2 ways.
Any other questions?
And I don't want you to think that I won't come back. If you review this, you have questions, whether it be for a specific department, specific item, let me know, Madam Chair, and I will come back. If I need to bring a department head with me, I will, if you need any specific information. Because obviously, these are big numbers, and obviously, as you delve into it, you may need a little bit more information. If you do need specific information that is connected to any of these requests, I just want to remind the committee that it is in your CIP book, or it should be. And I will make sure it gets distributed electronically as well as hard copies.
Thank you.
So I'll leave a hard copy for Greg and, is there anybody else?
Jeff.
I know Jeff. Is there any
No, it's just
No.
two.
other person missing? Okay. I keep thinking I'm missing one other one. Okay. All right, I'll leave a hard copy in the FinCom box for them, and you'll all have it electronically.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay?
This was a lot of work on your behalf. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is,
Okay, thank you. The only other item,
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it
when are you doing that? Tomorrow?
tomorrow, yeah.
no, I did that last week.
Are you going, Darlene, too?
Okay.
It's eye-opening, for
Sure
sure.
is.
Oh, yes.
So the only other item on my agenda is to discuss the bylaws that I was sent by the town moderator. Did everyone, yes.
I
Richard, you gotta check your email, buddy.
do.
Yeah, I forgot
Not
everything
often
coming here,
enough.
I don't know why.
I don't think you gave me that one back. Oh, yes, you did.
Okay, okay.
Okay. So essentially, the town moderator was just bringing it to our attention that we've been just writing our article explanations as a second summary of the purpose of the article itself, when really the bylaws want us to offer our reasons for voting one way or another on the article. So I propose that we do start to write in our explanations why we voted the way we did on each article, rather than.
Each of us?
I was just gonna say, we all,
Well,
because when you
Yeah,
hand
it
it out,
is.
you hand it out, so that if I'm writing it, do I take in consideration of how,
how
Everybody
the
vote.
finance committee
And then you
voted.
put
So
down
say
that.
it's 5-2, you would say 5 of us felt this way and 2 of us.
felt differently?
Jeff, do you want to chime in on your feelings about this?
How specifically do they want this, Jeff?
I had no idea. I remember John bringing this up after the last FinCom report, that he said this was in the bylaws, and it's new to me since I've been on the committee. I was always told that we're providing a more simple explanation for the taxpayers to understand than the provided explanation may give. So this is probably gonna take a little bit more time for us to come to an agreement on why we voted, particularly if there was a split vote. Why the committee voted the way it did. So this is gonna probably require us to have a lot more discussion about how we vote.
Yeah.
I think, if we want to get a better idea of what the moderator is asking for, maybe we invite him to our next meeting.
I did invite him tonight. He's unable to get here at 4 PM due to his business. I do tend to agree with him, though, and I have always found it to be a little redundant that the article states what it's for, the select board gives their summary, and then right below it, we give a second, restating, almost regurgitation of what has been said in the paragraphs above. I do agree that it makes more sense for us to explain why we either approved or did not recommend each article. I think it will also cut down on the number of people at town meeting who stand up and ask, why did FinCom vote this way? Well, as it turns out, we're supposed to be telling them why in our explanations. So I guess we'll continue to discuss this and maybe just,
I guess how elaborate do we get?
Yeah.
5 of us voted this for this reason, and the other 2, or whatever.
Well, generally speaking, we're pretty close to unanimous about 90% of the time, aren't we?
Yes, I think so.
yeah,
But sometimes you get a contentious article,
Yeah, you get cranky once in a while.
and if you get a 5-2 split.
and so do you, Greg.
If you get a 5-2 split,
You do resemble.
I think it should be straightforward enough to explain why, though. I don't think it'll be.
I don't have any problem with that, and I don't think it's going to be that tough to get it down. I mean, it may take a little more work, but, if you asked everybody around the table why they voted for one of the articles last year, I think you'd get a pretty straight answer, right?
Yeah.
And I think it doesn't have to be more than 1 or 2 sentences. In some of the articles which are easier to make decisions, there's probably just 1 sentence
Right,
needed.
Right.
It's the more difficult.
Yeah, I don't think we want to do war and peace on this. I mean,
No,
that's-
and I
that's what
don't
the-
think we need to name names either. We can just say one member was opposed to this idea. We don't need to,
Oh, I don't think we
it doesn't
should-
need to
I
be,
don't think we should name names.
yeah.
I don't think, names probably are not right, but I think that, if there's a split vote, like 5-2, the 2 dissenting should probably have, something to say about why they dissented. Or,
I actually, I had the idea that instead of assigning article explanations, as we have done in the past, I was going to offer that we just write them all together.
That's probably a very good idea.
Because there's always people that don't turn theirs in. We have to come together and edit them anyway, so why not just from scratch do them all as a group during our
I think we
meetings?
did that last year at one meeting where we were missing some
We
explanations.
were missing so
and
many
as a
that we-
group, Put them
yes.
together in about 5 minutes, it
Right.
seems.
Okay, well,
The one caution I will have about that is the time constraint we now have, since we've moved our meeting to 4 o'clock, and we've got a meeting coming up at 7 o'clock where we have to be out of the room.
yeah, I think it can be done, though, and I think I'll do my best to keep us moving along at a
Good pace.
decent pace.
Well, it's what we have to do, right? It's what the
Yep.
bylaws says, so we'll do it.
And maybe as we discuss an article and once we voted on it, even if we've only voted on 5 that night, those can be the 5 that we say, okay, this is the explanation,
Right,
this is why we
immediately after
decided.
voting, yeah. And I'm happy to, I'll bring my laptop with me. I type much faster than I write. Okay, so I am gone.
I might also suggest that the members on the Charter Review Committee may want to take this back and see about getting this into the charter, because that's what we had been following, and I don't think it has that language in it about explaining why we vote, because I believe that is what we were following, was the charter explanation. What the purpose of the Finance Committee was to provide an explanation of the article. So I might suggest the Charter Review Committee look at that and make sure it's in line with the bylaws.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll do that.
Thank you, yes.
Okay. I am gone next week. Lee will lead the meeting. Darlene, if you could take
Take
notes
minutes.
for her. Yes, please. I will do the agenda to the best of my,
Okay,
Um,
sure.
and then I will be back the following week. The school is presenting on February 13th. Mr. Collins, are you presenting your budget recommendations next?
Not now.
Next week?
Next week?
Or do we
Whatever the
have-
date is that was provided.
don't think
I believe it
was-
is.
I didn't think it was next week, I thought it was
No,
the
it's not
13th.
next week, because I go to the
13th.
select board first on the
Yeah.
operating budget.
So the 13th?
13th.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's just one clarification that I wanted to make, because the assistant and I were speaking off camera. I think your question was on SRF, and I thought you were referring to the 24 million. It is not applicable for design and engineering. I just wanted to
Oh.
clarify.
Oh, yeah, that was
Okay.
my question. So
Okay.
it's
So-
like,
So
it's-
if I gave you that impression, I misspoke. I was referring to the 24.
Okay.
right, so the
24.
first 3 line items, and it comes to a little less than 3 million, and that is, we're on our own.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
But not-
Mr.
Rodney,
Collins, can
it-
you remind
under-
me, if I could, when we spoke about, there was some money left over from Phase 1A, I think it's $5.5 million that's going back. They weren't going to repurpose that, but that's money we weren't going to use to be able to spend. So we're kind of flush with that number. Is that how you remember that?
That is how I vaguely remember it, but I would just want to double check before I misspeak, that's all.
Yes. We checked that with Jared to make sure that that was the case or gone, and
Will do.
see people next week.
Okay.
Will do. And I think I presented to the select board at the first meeting in February, and then it would be shortly thereafter that you would get the operating budget.
Okay.
I did notice when we were talking about the wastewater design and engineering, Mashpee, Wakeby, actually on the summary sheet to the right, it says debt exclusion, so that would not be a debt exclusion for those 3 items?
No, it would be. If it says debt exclusion, it's
Oh,
a
it
debt
would be.
exclusion,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
It's just not covered by SRF.
Oh, okay, I got it. Okay.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So Jeff, I have a question for you then. I have to have the report submitted by February 10th, but I'm not going to have any of those, we won't have those numbers if the town manager hasn't presented his budget to us.
No, the information in the town report is for 2024.
Oh, okay, so I can just email Rodney,
Don
Wayne, and Don?
Rodney and
Okay.
Don, and to get the information. Yes, it's reporting on what the finance committee did for 2004.
Okay,
2024.
24.
Okay.
okay. All right, anyone have anything further? And is there anything that needs to go on next week's agenda then? Do we need to still have the meeting if we don't,
Have an agenda?
yeah,
I know, because we won't have any articles, I don't think, because the deadline,
is the
I
10th?
think the deadline's February 10th, is that correct?
Yes.
Michaela? Okay, so we wouldn't have any articles.
So
Well, seems
is there,
silly,
Jeff, is there a reason for us to meet next week?
If there's no business that you can think of to take place next week, no.
Okay, then I will take us off the schedule then, and you are,
Thank you.
Which means I don't have to take notes.
We're going to get a secretary back? We had one when I first got here, right?
we did. They're working on it. That's the most anybody has told me.
What's the date for that? It's February?
So our next meeting will be February 13th. And we will have the budget presentation, and the school will present their budget to us. Okay,
So no meeting
anything
next-
further?
No meeting next week.
No meeting next week. So I'm looking for
A motion to adjourn.
Second.
any opposition? Guys, thanks for joining us on Zoom. See you in 2 weeks. Any opposition? Unanimous consent.